I'm going to be going out there is to evaluate what their needs are in those villages that we saw 9 years ago, to see what the changes are and how we can actually change things for the better. The effect on the people was just intense. They just scattered everywhere.
We're beginning to discover in countries like Zambia and Zimbabwe and Nepal that women are fundamentally the drivers of the local economy. And so if we can empower women, we can rebuild local economies. That seems to be what's coming through a lot of these podcasts.
Welcome everybody, this is another podcast of Snack on That. And our presenters today are me, Chris Edwards.
I'm Gavin Kibble.
And I'm Gwyn Williams.
And I just want to say today, I think Gav looks superb. He's looking sylph-like. The hairline's receding still, but the sylph-like look of Gav. Gav, tell us, why are you looking so well?
Well, I'm looking so well, Chris, because I'm going to make May matter.
Make May matter? What on earth is that about?
We're going to do some big fundraising events, and mostly they involve me walking huge distances, Chris.
Okay, come on, quickly tell me, how long?
So
how
there's
far?
two of them. One is on the 6th of May, where we'll be walking every food bank centre in the city of Coventry.
Which is how many?
23 miles worth of distance, and it's 15 or 16 food bank centres, don't know exactly, can't remember.
Perfect.
And then on the 18th of May, we'll be walking from St Bees Head over on the Irish Sea, across 200 miles or so to Robin Hood's Bay in the North Sea. Well, on the North
Okay,
Sea.
so the food bank-a-thon, what you're raising money for or something?
That's for Coventry Food Bank.
Okay.
And the other one is to raise money for an orphanage in Zambia. We've talked about that before in previous podcasts. But it's also a bit of a life thing for me because, as we know,
Bless,
yes,
yeah.
we're all over 60 here, ladies and gentlemen. But being the healthiest and the youngest, I felt it was my obligation and duty to walk and mark my 60th birthday by walking this.
And what Gwyn and I really want to know is, how's the blister preparation going?
Well, let's show you, Lee.
Oh! Desperately.
Shall I take the sock off?
No.
So we are going to have a blister blog as we do the walk, where
That's
you can enjoy the massive blisters that I acquire.
Well, hopefully you
You're
won't, 'cause
being
you've had
quite
some
a
advice.
bit of a Pied Piper as well, you?
Yeah, I'm picking up. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you'd like to do the walk with me, come and join the 20 or so other people who are joining me at different stages on the walk. There's one section where I've got about 7 people all walking with me.
That's incredible.
Are you joining me, Chris?
No, I'm just picking you up at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll do. I
Gwyn,
know
are you
you're
joining
stressing
me?
me about trying to
No,
walk, but
I'm going flying out of the country.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is just pathetic, you know. my two
Gwyn is
colleagues are doing their level best not to walk
Well,
with
you
me.
know, somebody's got to look after you when you're sort of absolutely wasted at the end. Gwyn's got to go to Zambia, Zimbabwe, and where's the other one?
South Africa.
South Africa.
Yes.
Things are going to be done, Gav, and you're doing your bit, which we're so thrilled about. Bless you.
Yeah, we're so grateful.
Ladies and gentlemen, I leave it to your own discretion to work out whether my two colleagues are trying to blag their way out of doing any of this walk at all, and how pathetic that is.
Blagging it is all right.
If you'd like to support it, anyway, go to the Feed the Hungry website. That's feedthehungry.org.uk, where you can pick up both activities and sponsor either one at your discretion. Chris, what have you been up to? I know what you've been up to. Ladies and gentlemen, when he talks to you about this, I've got to give him a hug.
Okay. There should be some wonderful music that comes behind and stroke, because I've been to Wembley with my favourite football team, Coventry City.
And what
And unfortunately, even though we were 3-0 down, we came back to 3-3. We scored a 4th goal in extra time, but it was not given. And VAR meant that...
What's VAR, Chris?
VAR, virtual assistant referee, but I think we talk about that later. So
No, tell me about it. Come on.
No, put it to one side.
No, come on. Out with it. It's a cathartic moment. Come on.
Okay. So, Hadji Wright scored the goal, which we all... No, he didn't score the goal. He passed the ball to the guy Victor Torp, who scored the goal, and the place erupted because we'd been 3-0 down. Unfortunately, the referee was then contacted by his virtual assistant referee, who said they needed to check, and then the line showed that... Just like your toenails will be showing in a future episode of this podcast, probably, the toenail meant he was offside. So we had to go, it was back to 3-3. Then it went to penalties, and we lost on penalties. But it was a fantastic game, and I'm so proud to be a Coventry City football supporter, but also the citizens of Coventry, who were fantastic in how they showed things at the game. The flags waving was incredible, and the victory of the other team, Man United, was described as a humiliating victory.
Yes.
Which is quite an interesting phrase.
And you've been sobbing every sort of
I've
5
been
minutes,
sobbing
yes.
every day since.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a celebration. That was a celebration event because it was fantastic. It was unbelievably good. But today's actually another anniversary, isn't it, Gwyn? Tell us about that.
It's the 9th anniversary of the earthquake in Nepal.
And it's relevant to you because...
I was out there at the time, helping with the recovery.
And you've been to the Nepalese embassy, I think, in the last week or so?
I have indeed, yeah. I was invited there.
What happened?
It was a meeting of nearly 40 different organisations. We were coming together to discuss how we can create impact in Nepal.
Many of whom were involved with the earthquake, I presume.
They were, helping in developing schools and hospitals and other initiatives in Nepal.
And 9 years later, we're still involved?
We're still involved. Yeah, we've increased our involvement by developing school programs out there, farming programs.
Is that school feeding programs?
Yeah, we're feeding over 650 kids there.
That's brilliant.
So maybe you can take us back 9 years to that initial moment when you started to get involved with Nepal.
Yeah, we went out there soon after the earthquake, but then we've also been supplying food and blankets and emergency stuff to people we got in touch with right within that first week. So we got supplies right to the heart of the epicenter where the earthquake was.
Goodness me, so this is one of those occasions where Feed the Hungry has suddenly seen a need and acted upon it. What actually brought it about? Why Nepal? Just because of the earthquake, or do we have relationships there, or what?
No, we will respond to disaster wherever it is, whether it's Nepal, Haiti, Japan. We've been involved with the tsunamis as well in the East Asian area. So, and that's how we actually develop programs. So we see where the need is most, and then we look at the long-term future of people coming out of those disaster zones.
So were you contacted, or did you find a contact in the country?
We found a contact in the country. We wanted to see who was responding, what the chatter was like on Facebook, and then we checked out the people that we were talking to.
So who did you find?
We found a guy called Ruben, and he's been really good in sourcing materials, and then he has a network of over 400 pastors who were able to find out information of where the actual need was in the nation, and where the holes were in terms of where the main aid agencies were working and places that weren't receiving help.
So presumably you went out to visit him? Tell us.
Yeah. It was only a couple of months afterwards, and it was really emotional journey going from Kathmandu. People were still suffering from shock. We came out of the airport, and one of the things walking around Kathmandu is seeing how much the earthquake affected the main city there.
Lots of buildings demolished, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the earth had shifted, so you were actually looking at hotels at the third floor from the where we were driving through.
Was that your first occasion in being in the earthquake zone yourself?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And what was your overall emotional response to that?
In terms of how it affected people, in terms of seeing the shock and horror, and even 2 months afterwards, in their well-being,
How did it affect you?
Yeah, it affected me in terms of seeing the pain and anguish on people's faces, and remembering.
So it was emotional.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So, I mean, you get out there, you land, you have an immediate response. You're at the airport. What do you do then? I mean, we see all these things on the telly about aid going to earthquake zones or whatever. What did you actually do? How did you get anywhere? And where did you go?
Yeah, well, we had to drive because none of the airports were working, apart from the one we landed in. And then driving through the city, you could see the effects of the earthquake there. So we stopped there to talk to some of the people. And during that time, we were outside a hotel and a residential area. And one young person shouted "earthquake" as a joke. But the effect on the people was just intense. They just scattered everywhere. And, these kids were laughing, but the shock in people's faces and everything was just palpable.
That's incredible. So you're on your way to meet somebody?
Yeah, we were on the way to meet Pastor Rubin, who had sent drivers to collect us. It was a 30-hour drive.
In terms of the people that you met, and the lives that have been wrecked or just totally challenged in all sorts of circumstances, what do you remember of those particular people?
Yeah, we kept stopping on the way and actually talking to people and what their experiences were. I actually got to stop at somebody who was ploughing with 2 oxen, and so he was getting on with life. And the next person we met was just sitting on the roadside, and we talked to him, and he had lost everything, and he was just sitting there in complete shock. And this was 2 months afterwards. He'd got no idea where to start rebuilding his life because he'd lost everything. We went up to the top of the mountain, and we met with these women who had lost their husbands, and some of them had lost other family members and children in the earthquake itself. These houses are built with rock, and so when these houses collapsed, it was not just a few bricks. It was actually these rocks had been shaken apart and killed a lot of their family members. So sitting down with these women, and Eileen and Elaine, sitting down and hearing their stories of living a normal life, of actually farming in their fields and doing ordinary things, walking home with bags of food on their back and whatever, and then suddenly having nothing. The farming, the fields had been broken up, the houses had just collapsed, losing their family members, and the whole structure of community had broken down. And the sharing their stories was very cathartic for them in actually being able to talk to somebody and tell of their stories, and their tragedy was just some way of actually getting out of that shock mentality that they were in.
So what was your response to that?
Our response was actually, finding out what their needs were and helping to start building their lives. They wanted to hear that somebody was listening to them.
So you listened to them. What did you do for them at the time?
At the time, we were bringing big bags of rice and food and water because they had no way of getting the basic things.
What about shelter?
Yeah, we had tarpaulins and blankets for them.
And they were just put up on on the side of the road?
Some of the walls were still up, so we were trying to make tents with the walls that were still available to work with.
But presumably even the roads were out and things like that, so you had trouble getting stuff up there?
Yeah, we had a landslide whilst we were there, so we were watching rocks falling down the mountainside. So
I suppose there's dangerous aftershocks as well, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course it was coming up to the rainy season, so all the natural contours were shaken up. So landslides were very, very frequent now.
So you were working as Feed the Hungry, and we know that obviously there were some other emergency disaster relief organisations out there. So we're talking 9 years on now. in terms of what happened in Nepal. Did you just leave them there? You finished your trip and then came back? What's happened since?
No, we've developed school programs out there. We now feed over 650 kids. We've built 2 schools. We also have a well digging program in a lot of these villages.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a real good connection with them.
So 9 years on, it's great because we're not just letting them be, and we're trying to help them sustain themselves over that 9 years. Have you been back yet, or what's the situation there, or what's happening now?
I'm going back later on this year.
Okay.
So looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
The situation as a nation, they've put a lot of structures, political structures and governmental structures. They now have district ministries working throughout the country. But the actual poverty level is one of the poorest countries now in that region.
Okay.
They're losing a lot of the educated people out to other countries.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing for them in Nepal.
Mm-hmm. And I hear you got an invite this week, a special place you went to visit this week.
Yeah, I went to the Nepalese embassy.
Okay. You've been to the Nepalese embassy, Gav?
I don't even know where the Nepalese embassy is, mate.
Where is the Nepalese
Where
embassy?
is the Nepalese embassy?
Just Kensington Palace is next door.
Oh, nice.
In
I've been to
central
Kensington
London.
Palace, though.
I haven't been there. Been to Buckingham Palace.
I stayed overnight in Kensington Palace, mate.
Yeah.
Oh, your name
That's
dropper.
another day.
Yes.
Okay, so Nepalese embassy, what was going on there?
Yeah, I was invited to meet a lot of other organisations that were working in Nepal.
Yeah.
A lot of them are people who had responded to the earthquake in 2015. And looking at where we were as organisations, helping people there. And some great stories of how they'd help individual hospitals, building hospitals and building schools. But the big question is, how do we create impact in a nation that is still suffering from the after effects of that earthquake?
And did the ambassador to Nepal speak to you all? Or?
He did indeed. Yeah, he spoke at the beginning of the event.
And what was he saying about the situation there now?
Yeah, he was very grateful to the organisations here in the UK for the work that had been done, and was very interested in how government and organisations could integrate their work together in developing programmes that created an impact and changed lives.
So what's the view on how lasting impact can be created in a nation like Nepal?
Yeah, with a lot of the nation is suffering very much by the environmental changes. The snow melt on the mountains with Everest around there is affecting their supply of water. Over farming is affecting the environment, and so they're looking at the long-term needs of the nation in developing to combat the environmental changes.
From what you heard at the Nepalese embassy, what's the current thinking amongst NGOs such as ourselves about how lasting impact could be made in a country like Nepal?
Yeah, it was a difficult, we had workshops there, and the realisation that what they were achieving was very micro in terms of what needs to happen in the nation. And we were asking the question that how can we actually work together to create impact? Because there were a lot of skills there, but not connecting. And how do we create transformation? You need to actually develop programs that brought children out of poverty into education. Then where do they go from that place to actually develop businesses and opportunities to actually develop the wealth of the nation?
Because if you get it right in Nepal, if you get a model right there, then it would work in any country with similar circumstances and situations.
Yeah, it would do, because they have great natural resources that are in one place they're being abused and overused, whilst in other places they're underdeveloped. So there is a need to actually create farming opportunities that actually not only sustain them but create a profit and a marketplace to build a need or answer a need in the actual cities. A lot of people are migrating to the city and leaving the villages. So land is not being used wisely around the city, but underused in the villages because people are moving away from the villages.
So this is kind of born out through the idea that you've been having around creating transformation centres, not just in Nepal, but in other parts of the world?
That's right, yeah. They say that by 2050, 70% of the world population will be in cities. So people are migrating into the cities and causing huge big slums and environmental impact in cities.
So what is a transformation centre, Gwyn?
It's reskilling people to actually see the potential that they have as individuals and actually developing the natural resources in those areas to actually help those not only survive but be of significant value.
So talking of transformation, what about this woman who you've talked about, who's been devastated by the earthquake, her family's been devastated by the earthquake? What do you think's going to happen? What do you think's happened to her and will happen to her in the future?
Exactly. So what I'm going to be going out there is to evaluate what their needs are in those villages that we saw 9 years ago, to see what the changes are and how we can actually change things for the better in actually developing things like whether it's chicken farms or whether it's goat farms or whether it's producing food that is needed in the towns and cities that they can sell, and developing cooperatives, retraining these young women in actual developing things like nettle cloths. Now, nettle cloth is something that I found out was like silk out in Nepal. You actually can weave nettles,
Wow.
and they're as fine as any silk cloth that you can actually find elsewhere. And it's something that they can actually sell and make a profit for, and not only feed a family, but actually create wealth for themselves and their families.
So Gwyn, yet again, and we've done this in another podcast, you talk about the women and especially the widows because of the circumstances, whether it be war or whether it be devastating earthquake or something. Do you see that as a fundamental part of what we do as an organisation?
Yeah, actually to give women value and to acknowledge them that they themselves are not underclassed in a culture that has a class system. Women that then are underclassed,
And
even under the caste system.
It's deeper than this. We're beginning to discover in countries like Zambia and Zimbabwe and Nepal that women are fundamentally the drivers of the local economy. And so if we can empower women, we can rebuild local economies. That seems to be what's coming in through a lot of these podcasts.
And one of the questions I've got as well is, as let's just ask, as European men, but as men, can we have an influence on the men in those countries to treat women with value and upholding them and all that way? Do you think that we've got a voice, or we should be having a voice to those men to say you need to lift those women out of what they're doing?
Yeah, the women are undervalued greatly in Nepal, so much so that they're used as commodities. So a lot of the young women are sold into sex slavery in India because that's a means of income for them. And there are certain areas that actually see that as a production line, which is tragic to think about. So we've developed 3 centres where we are recovering these children from India through safe houses, and then bringing them back into different areas of Nepal because they can't go back to their home villages because of the disgrace, which is totally unbalanced because it's the people who are selling them who should be disgraced.
Is it a cultural or an economic problem, or a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both. It's a tradition that has gone on for centuries. How do you survive? You reach out to whatever you can sell to actually survive until food is on the table.
Thanks, Gwyn. There is one more thing, because it's very pertinent to my life at the moment, having been at Wembley recently for Coventry City's Wembley FA Cup semi-final against Manchester United, where we had a toenail that prevented us from winning the game. And that was all to do with the video assistant referee.
How gutted are you?
How gutted am I about the City losing?
Yes. It was a tragedy.
It was total tragedy.
Yes.
And but whatever angle
you cried,
you play,
for days.
I didn't quite cry, but I was emotional. But having
3-0 down at half time.
3-0 down at half time, and then 3-3, and then we scored the goal 4-3, and then this thing called VAR, which is my first experience of it, which led me to believe, could we use VAR in life itself?
Yes, we could.
So, what about
weddings? I think, yes. Is she married? Is she not married? There is that moment where VAR, you get it across the line. What about funerals?
Yeah, in fact, you can actually get the vicar to say,
Did she get there on time?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you really want to do this, or do you not? Because once you're over the line, you're done.
That's it,
So
yes.
you could have video assistant. They could put videos up in at the wedding of things that have happened in that person's life, and then they could decide.
That would just be going back to the old way of jumping over the broomstick, wasn't
Yes,
it?
exactly. What about crossing red lights? Having VAR, would that irritate an entire population? Probably would.
Well, mind you already get a photograph of things like that, don't you? Through
if
the post.
there is a camera on it,
If
yes.
it's a camera. And actually, that is a whole new podcast about surveillance, isn't it?
It is.
And everywhere is CCTV, and you can get caught for anything.
Well, I got caught on a yellow box junction the other day, and I was really irritated. I entered it as a bus pulled up at a bus stop just on the other side. Wasn't anywhere I could go.
Well, I know somebody who got caught because a member of the public took a photograph of them at a traffic light on their phone and uploaded it to. You can do this. You can upload it to the local police.
Okay.
And the local police then catch the person who's and then fine them for having a phone. So wherever you go, these phones, the surveillance, the amount of stuff, that's another podcast, most definitely.
Anyway, if you want to send messages of sympathy to Chris Edwards about the loss that Coventry City football team suffered on Sunday afternoon at the hands of Manchester United, then please send them to chris@feedthehungry.org.uk.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gav. I think we'll finish it there. That was Snack on That. That was Gavin. That was Gwyn. And this is me. Thank you.